Hello, we are Team Yena Dynamites, and this is our game, The End. This is a third-person action platformer where the player embodies a thief named Rhys. After stealing an ancient artifact, he sees in the distance the scarf, mercenaries looking for the same artifact. Armed with his two mechanical arms, working as grappling hooks, the thief will have to escape his adversaries and find a way out.
Rhys steals the artifact in the game, and we wanted to convey this notion of catching by giving the thief two grappling hooks that will be used to move around, attack enemies or unlock the next level. This is our core mechanics. We wanted to create a game where we can move around dynamically with a smooth feeling in a gigantic environment.
We chose a realistic artistic direction, but with characters that have quite cartoonish proportions. We wanted the hero to be a bit crazy and expressive so that we could have fun with it. Our main inspirations are Star Wars, Spider-Man and Ratchet & Clank for the cartoon side. We also chose to put context with 2D cinematics at the beginning and at the end of the game.
As an environment artist, I was in charge of all the environment's production in the game. From A to Z, the creation and design of most of the 3D assets. I made most of the visuals and the technical arts, materials and shaders. For example, I made the master material to texture all the ARTFX stuffs with a minimum amount of noises called and 3 different layers usable with vertex painting, baked mask or tiling mask and normals. I often worked with the teachers and Henry or game and level designer to drive the player throughout our world builds and make an environment grammar. That way the player learns at the beginning and follows naturally to the end. I also worked a lot on harmonizing and tweaking all the graphic assets made by others, and that in terms of aesthetic, design and technical specificities to be well integrated in the game.
As a specialist, I had the pleasure to work on different stuff on the project. For us, the foliage was an essential way to add life and color to the environment. I first worked on the ball plant. They were quite fun to do and they had a good mood. I had more challenge while making the palm tree. I didn't follow a specific concept, I used the anise flower as a references to make them. At that time, I was offered to make Rhys' hair. After finishing the hair, I was back into the foliage with a new light on it. The fun part was to make the shader in Unreal. It was quite challenging since we wanted to have many colors and different textures. Then, after I realized all of these plants, I made some integration and optimization on the game. I made the LODs of all the assets that are in the game.
As a specialist VFX artist, I had to create a lot of different effects. The most important and difficult effect I need to create were the grapple hook. I need to make that effect look good between two positions in the world. Also, making the artifact alive and reacting to the particles when he's talking to the thief. I had to work a lot with a programmer to make my effect work correctly like we want for the gameplay, and then make it beautiful in terms of references and concept. I use a lot of technique here, with particles, shader and simulation.
The biggest job was to adjust the traces on the ground and also the use of the grapples. Thanks to Joris, our programmer, we were able to tweak all the settings for Rhys, but also the enemies during the arena fights. Around these settings, we created maps to see what would work best with our gameplay. Together with Paolo, we set up the environment of the planet K52.9 Canyons and used the rational level design method in this desertic place. Throughout the level, we also worked on the narrative aspect of the game, what the story behind each area, and the evolution of Rhys and the artifact relationship between.
To allow Rhys to cross the canyon, we gave him 2 grappling hooks. We wanted to create a good feeling for this grappling, and for that, we took some references in different games like Spider-Man or Bionic Commando. The difficulty was to calculate Rhys' trajectory because he can grab everything everywhere. To take the best out of its mechanic, we restrict its use in certain surfaces and zones.
Rhys' stories begin during the pre-productions. The first ideas were oriented toward a brutal and crazy bounty hunter, and it's during our various brainstorming sessions that I have imagined a humanoid hyena and drew a first sketches. After several attempts, I managed to give the hyena its final design. Aggressive, with depthful tastes, Rhys represents excess. The art directions allowed me to invent this cheesy character from the 80s that I have enjoyed creating. I learned to adapt the need of my co-worker, including the animators and game designer, and also to the use of the characters in the game. For the enemies, having grown up with Star Wars, it was fun to think of its enemy a little ridiculous but threatening, living in the canon of some planet far, far away.
For the hair part, our character artist already had an idea about the appearance of the hair he wanted on Rhys, Amulet. Constantin gave me a lot of feedback that were helpful in the process.
I joined this group for a few months as a props artist. One of my main tasks was to create the spaceship that Rhys would use to escape from the planet. This spaceship was a real challenge, as this was the biggest asset I've had to create. Coming up with a concept that would fit the environment and was doable in the time frame I had was the most challenging part of all this. Once this was done, I was asked to create props and decals that would help the environment artist to fill the gaps in the world there.
Once the character's proxy was done, I started working on the rig. As we were short on time, we decided to use the same rig for Rhys and the scarves. In order to optimize the production, we looked for a solution and decided to use some animation from a pack for the locomotion part. We also brought in reinforcement. 2 students from 4th years helped us. This way, I could focus on more specific animations like the double grab or the generator. Many back and forths were made between Maya and Unreal, since the animation played an important part in the feeling of our game. We had to often check out how it rendered in the engine, as it sometimes varied a lot between the simple animation and how it looked in the game.
We wanted to have a funny surprise when the player completes the game, and I thought about having a playable credit. The idea was to make a game inspired by arcade games, with the constraint to only use assets used in the main game. The main challenge was to make the level enjoyable, but also readable for the player. The 2 main inspirations were Space Invader and Asteroids. To give this arcade feeling while only using 3D HQ assets, I've created a pixelating material that I applied to all the level.
As a producer, it was challenging to coordinate the production of everyone and make sure that we were on the good way to achieve what we planned to do, with a high level of quality within the amount of time we had. We are proud to present our game. Thanks for watching, don't geek out, and fly away!